All right, so you're prepping for these coding interviews, right? And you want to like really nail it.
Hmm.
You've been, going over all the algorithms and data structures and all that good stuff. But
Yeah.
it's interesting because acing the technical side is only part of it, isn't it?
It's so true. You can get so laser focused on, just the technical prep work and forget that companies are looking for more than just a code writing machine.
Right.
They want to see problem solving skills, how you think, how you articulate your thoughts, your ability to collaborate and, really work in a team and how you adapt to feedback.
Yeah, it's like you can have the most brilliant solution, but if you can't explain it or like work with others on it, then right.
Exactly. It's almost like it doesn't even exist.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, this deep dive is all about really highlighting the often overlooked but super crucial role of communication in coding interviews.
And that's what was so fascinating about these sources, right? Because they really dig into this idea that it's not enough to just be good at the technical stuff. You got to be able to talk about it too. It's
You got to bridge that gap
Yeah.
between, this complex technical world and how it actually gets applied in a team, in a real world setting.
And one of the things that I thought was super interesting and kind of counterintuitive was this idea of thinking out loud during the interview.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like my instinct would be to, have it all figured out in my head and then present it. But
But think about it from the interviewer's perspective, right?
Like-
They're not just looking for the right answer. They want to see how you got there.
so it's like they want to see your thought process in action.
Exactly.
Like, are you someone who just hits a wall and gives up or
Right. Are you methodical?
Yeah.
How do you break down a problem into smaller steps?
Right.
How do you, consider different approaches and really what are the trade-offs of each and how do you communicate those clearly and concisely?
Yeah, it's almost like they're looking for those moments where you get stuck because that's when you really see how someone problem solves.
Absolutely. And those are the moments that really matter in a real work environment, right? Because you're not always going to have the answer right away.
Right.
You're going to have to be able to talk through challenges with your team, get feedback, and iterate on your solutions together.
It's like that image of, the developer hunched over their computer in the dark. Like, that's not really how it works.
No, not at all.
It's much more collaborative.
It's much more collaborative. And I think, this whole idea of thinking out loud, it kind of ties into another really important aspect that these sources highlight, which is asking clarifying questions.
Oh, yeah, because let's be real. Sometimes those interview prompts can be super vague.
Yeah, and that's intentional.
Okay.
It's not always about, being given step-by-step instructions, but more about how you handle ambiguity.
Right, because the real world of development is messy and
Yeah.
things change all the time.
Exactly.
You can't be afraid to ask for clarification when you need it.
Right, and asking thoughtful questions, it shows that you're paying attention to detail, that you're thinking critically about the problem, and that you're not afraid to speak up when something's unclear.
And I would imagine it also shows that you're not going to waste everyone's time by coding up the wrong solution just because you were afraid to ask for directions.
Exactly. It's about being proactive and showing initiative.
So we've talked about thinking out loud and asking good questions. What happens once you've actually tackled the problem and you've written some code?
Right. So then the next hurdle is how do you explain your solution in a way that makes sense even to someone who might not be a coding whiz?
Because code itself is a form of communication, right?
It is.
You're communicating with other developers who might work on your code in the future.
Exactly. And not just other developers, but potentially project managers, stakeholders, even clients who might not have a technical background.
Right.
So being able to bridge that gap to translate your code into something that everyone can understand, that's incredibly valuable.
So it's almost like you need to be bilingual.
Yeah. I love that analogy.
Fluent in both the language of code and the language of, like, normal humans.
That's a great way to put it. And just like learning any new language, it takes practice and a willingness to adapt your communication style to different audiences.
And speaking of adapting, one of the things that really stood out to me from these sources was how important it is to be good at taking feedback.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it's not just about getting the right answer. It's about how you react when someone suggests a different approach or points out an area where you could improve.
It's so true. And, it's easy to get defensive, right? Especially when you've poured your heart and soul into your code.
Oh, yeah.
But being open to feedback and being able to incorporate suggestions gracefully, that's really crucial in any collaborative environment.
For sure. And it's like You could be so focused on just getting your code to work
Right?
that you might miss a more elegant or efficient solution.
Exactly. And sometimes a fresh pair of eyes can make all the difference. And the way you handle those interactions, whether it's during a code review with a colleague or getting feedback from an interviewer, it really speaks volumes about your teamwork skills and your ability to learn and grow.
It's like a little sneak peek into how you'd be as a teammate.
Exactly. It's a microcosm of your overall approach to collaboration.
So it's not just about what you say in those moments, but also how you say it.
100%.
You mean like body language and tone of voice?
All of that. Yeah, you could have the most brilliant solution and articulate it perfectly.
Yeah.
But if you're slouching, avoiding eye contact, or sounding monotone,
Right.
it's going to send the wrong message.
It's like your body is saying, I don't want to be here, but your mouth is saying, I'm super excited about this opportunity.
Exactly. You got to have those nonverbal cues matching up with your words.
So how much weight do you think interviewers actually put on those nonverbal cues?
I think it's huge, honestly, because they're looking for those subtle signals that indicate confidence, enthusiasm, your ability to handle pressure. They want to see how you'd fit into the company culture, how you'd interact with the team.
Because different companies have such different vibes, right?
Sure.
Like some are super buttoned up and others are more laid back and casual.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And those cultural differences often show up in their communication styles, too.
Oh, interesting.
Like some companies are all about direct, concise communication,
Right.
while others prefer a more collaborative, consensus-driven approach.
So how do you figure out what a company is looking for? I mean, is it just a guessing game?
Well, not necessarily.
Uh.
You can actually do some research on this.
Oh, okay.
Like check out their website, read their mission statement, look at their social media presence.
Oh, that's a good point.
What kind of image are they projecting?
You can usually tell a lot about a company just
Yeah.
from how they present themselves to the world. It's like showing up to a party, and
Yeah.
trying to figure out if it's like a casual hangout or if everyone's going to be super formal.
Exactly right. You want to make sure you're reading the room and you're dressed appropriately, so to speak.
Totally. And I guess that kind of brings us to the question of like, okay, so we've talked about all these different aspects of communication, like thinking out loud, asking clarifying questions, explaining your code, clearly being good at taking feedback, even paying attention to body language and company culture. Is there anything else that these sources highlighted as being particularly important for nailing the communication side of a coding interview?
Yeah, there is. And I think it's something that people often overlook.
Okay, what's that?
Practice.
Oh, yeah, of course.
It might seem obvious, but it's amazing how many people just wing it.
Right.
And the thing is, communication is a skill just like anything else. The more you practice, the better you get.
Totally. And I'm guessing there are some specific ways to actually practice for this kind of thing.
Absolutely. The source mentioned a few really good ones. One that came up a lot was pair programming.
Oh, yeah. Pair programming.
Have you ever done that?
I have. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's such good practice for these interviews because you're forced to talk through your code, explain your thought process in real time, get feedback from your partner. It's like having a built-in sounding board.
Yeah. It's like you can't just be like, oh, it works in my head.
Right, exactly. You have to be able to articulate it and defend your choices.
And I feel like it also helps you get used to like getting feedback that you might not always agree with.
Oh, absolutely. Because in a pair programming situation, your partner might have a completely different approach, and you have to be able to navigate that respectfully and constructively.
So it's like practice for those moments in an interview when, the interviewer might challenge your solution or suggest a different path.
For sure. And another suggestion from the sources was to try explaining complex coding concepts to someone who's not technical at all,
Oh, I love that.
like a friend or family member.
Right.
Because it forces you to break things down into simpler terms and really think about how to communicate effectively to a non-technical audience.
Yeah, it's like explaining what you do to your grandma.
Exactly. And you'd be surprised how helpful that can be.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't even realize how much jargon you're using until you try to explain it to someone who has no idea what you're talking about.
That's so true. And the sources also mentioned that it can be helpful to record yourself solving coding problems and then watch it back.
Oh, that's a good idea. I hate watching myself on video, though.
Me too. But it can be really eye-opening because you might notice that you're rambling or using filler words or getting stuck in certain places.
Right. It's like having a personal coach who can give you direct feedback on your delivery.
Exactly. And speaking of coaches, participating in code reviews is another fantastic way to hone those communication skills.
Yeah, code reviews are great for that.
Because you're both giving and receiving constructive criticism, which is such a huge part of the development process.
And it's not always easy to do well.
No, it's definitely a skill that takes practice, but code reviews provide a really safe space to practice articulating your ideas, clearly defending your design choices, and incorporating feedback effectively.
And I would imagine that how you handle those interactions in a code review can really make or break your reputation as a teammate.
Absolutely, because it shows your colleagues whether you're someone who's open to collaboration and willing to learn and grow, or if you're someone who's defensive and resistant to feedback.
So it sounds like acing those coding interviews is about so much more than just being a coding whiz.
It is.
It's about being a communication champion, too.
I love that that's a great way to put it because you need to be able to demonstrate that you have the technical chops, the problem-solving skills, and the ability to communicate effectively with both technical and non-technical
It's
audiences.
like the whole package.
It really is.
Yeah,
And
so-
remember, you're not just trying to get the job. You're trying to find the right fit for your skills and your personality.
Right, it's a two-way street.
Exactly. So be yourself, showcase your passion, and don't be afraid to let your communication skills shine. You might just surprise yourself with how far they can take you.
I love that. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of coding interviews. Hopefully you've gained some valuable insights that will help you approach your next interview with confidence and clarity. Until next time, happy coding.